So I want to talk about why I'm not Roman Catholic. But before I go through my reasons for not being Roman Catholic, I just wanted to make sure that it's clear that I'm not making the video because I hate Roman Catholics. Because I'm sure some have noticed that I have spoken about Catholicism sometimes, most of the time in passing, is to their involvement in politics and even within religion. I've spoken about Catholic Church a few times, but it's not because I hate Roman Catholics. And this is not what I'm not going to say is not necessarily aimed at the members, those who are part of the Roman Catholic Church. I'm talking about those who are just the laity. I'm not talking about the laity of the Roman Catholic Church as such. I'm talking about it's mostly, what I'm saying is mostly directed at the hierarchy, the leaders of the Catholic Church who know the truth, but are keeping their members in the dark about what the truth is. So yeah, I've mentioned other churches as well. I'm not just talking about the Roman Catholic Church. I've mentioned the Anglicans, I've mentioned the Mormons, I've mentioned the Jehovah's Witnesses, and in my next video where I talk about why I'm not a part of certain religions or part of certain churches, I'm actually going to talk about Islam and why Islam is false and why I'm not a Muslim. But in this video, I'm talking about Roman Catholicism. So I don't want to go through the history of where Roman Catholicism comes from in too much detail, because I've kind of already covered that in my video about how the world is ruled through religion. The series of videos that I'm producing on how the world really works. I produced one. I made a video on how Roman Catholicism is basically the center, or the Vatican is the center for the ruling the world through religion, and that the Catholic Church is the mother of all of most of the different denominations that we have, whether it be Calvinists, Anglicans, Presbyterians, Methodists, Lutherans. They all came out of the Catholic Church, and now we see that if you go back and watch that video that I've mentioned, how the world is ruled through religion, you see that all those churches, including the Orthodox Church, have gone back basically and united with the Catholic Church, and they've basically recognized the Pope as the head of all their churches. So that's actually addressed in the book of Revelation, um, uh, chapter 17 specifically, where it says that Revelation chapter 17 verse 5, it talks about Babylon, spiritual Babylon, being the mother of harlots. So yeah, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about the history of the Roman Catholic Church and where it came from, but I think it's important for Roman Catholics to understand how their church was founded, because many times when we are part of a denomination, we don't really investigate as to where that denomination came from, how it was founded, but it's important to do that. So basically, Catholicism or Roman Catholicism is basically the ancient religion of the Romans, and the Romans worshipped pagan gods, and their day of worship was Sunday. So for all those Christians as well who are watching this video who worship on Sunday, you just need to understand that Sunday sacredness or going to church on Sunday is not biblical. It's not Christian. It came from paganism. There's nowhere in the Holy Scriptures where we are commanded to worship on Sunday. So the priests of Baal, and you can easily identify them by what they wear on their heads. They have what's called a fish mitre. It looks like a fish that's looking up into the sky. That's from the worship of Dagon, who we read about in the Old Testament. I believe it's in First or Second Samuel, somewhere there. Dagon, the fish god. That's where they wear that hat. And in fact, I'll insert a photo or a picture of what the priests of Dagon used to wear, so you can see what I'm talking about. So any church where you see the priests or the bishops wearing that fish head is basically they are following that pagan religion of sun worship and of Dagon worship. Dagon was the fish god. So the basically the priests of Baal were their headquarters initially was based in Pergamum or Pergamos, which we read about in Revelation chapter 2. Where Christ is basically talking to the seven churches of Asia Minor. So yeah, he has a message for the church in Pergamum. So the priests of Baal who wear the fish mitre were based in Pergamum, or also referred to as Pergamos, but they moved their capital from Pergamos or Pergamum to Rome. So what happened is that in 330 AD, Emperor Constantine, who was the one ruling the Roman Empire at the time, he moved the capital of the Roman Empire to Byzantium, and he changed the name. He gave Byzantium the name Constantinople, naming it after himself. Now today Constantinople is known as Istanbul. So, but when Constantine did that, when he moved the capital of the Roman Empire to Byzantium, he left the city of Rome vacant without a leader, so to speak. And then the one that filled in that position that had been left vacant was the Bishop of Rome, who today we know as a Pope. And in fact, the Pope still uses the title of Bishop of Rome. So he began, the Bishop of Rome began to claim that he was the head of all the other bishops, that were scattered around the different cities and countries. And he began to become very powerful, and started calling himself the Vicar of Christ, the one that takes the place of Christ here on earth. And yet, for those who read their holy scriptures, we know that the one that takes the place of Christ is the Holy Spirit. So straight away, that's blasphemy. And what the other thing that happened as well is that the true Christians who did not bow the knee, so to speak, to the Bishop of Rome were then persecuted. A lot of Christians were martyred, burnt on the stake, and in the Colosseums they were fed to animals, and some were basically covered in pitch and then set on fire, pitch or tar, I think, set on fire as an amusement to the Romans, who didn't really recognize Christianity as the religion that worshipped the true God. It was basically like entertainment for them. So yeah, there were many millions that were killed because of the Roman Catholic Church, because they had a different religion. They didn't worship on Sunday. They didn't bow before graven images. They didn't worship graven images, and they refused to recognize the Pope as the head of their churches, including actually the Orthodox Church. That's one of the reasons why the Orthodox Church split from the Roman Catholic Church. It was mainly two things. It was the issue of the Sabbath. The Sabbath is Saturday, not Sunday. And the Orthodox Christians refused to recognize the Pope as the head of their church, or their churches, and that caused a split. It was known as the Great Schism, and I believe that happened in around the year 1100, somewhere around there. So I just wanted to go to back to the issue of persecution. There were many Christians that were persecuted, and many Christians who were tortured. And of course, as time went on, the Roman Catholic Church established what was called the Office of Inquisition, where those who were accused of so-called heresy being following the Holy Scriptures, and they were accused of being witches, and then they were tortured. They were put on what's called a rack, where they're their arms and their legs were pulled away from their bodies until the joints came apart, and they were roasted. They had their feet roasted, or their entire bodies would be roasted whilst they were alive. There were many torture instruments that were used to persecute or to torture Christians. And some of the Christians that were persecuted, some of the Christian churches were like a group of Christians known as the Waldenses, who were from Italy and France, and then there were the Albigenses as well. And both these churches, some of them anyway, kept the Sabbath. We also had the St. Thomas Christians in India, who were persecuted by the Jesuits. When the Jesuits went to India and found that there were Christians who kept the Sabbath, they were persecuted as well. And then we had the Christians in Ireland, who were persecuted, and that's where we get the story of Saint Patrick, who they claim was a Roman Catholic, but he wasn't Roman Catholic. He was actually a Sabbath keeping Christian. So even some of the identities of those who were true Christians in history, some of them, their identities were stolen, and now they claim that those same people were Roman Catholics. We know Roman Catholics don't keep the Sabbath, but Saint Patrick kept the Sabbath. And the churches in Africa, especially in Ethiopia, some of them were Sabbath keeping, and there were many churches in Africa that were following the Holy Scriptures, and it is said by some that the Catholic Church couldn't do anything basically to get them to become Roman Catholic and to recognize the Pope or the Bishop of Rome as the head of their churches. So in order to basically split and destroy those churches, it's said by some that the Catholic Church came up with a scheme to enslave African Christians. And not only that, but the Catholic Church was involved in the slave trade and in owning slaves. Specifically, I've got a book called Catholicism and Slavery, written by a man called Richard Miller, who says that the Jesuits and other Catholics, owned slaves in America. So anyway, that's kind of a very brief summary of where the Catholic Church came from. The priests of Baal, who were sun worshippers and idol worshippers, were originally based in Pergamum, and then they moved to Rome. And then when Constantine moved the capital of Rome to Byzantium and called it Constantinople, which today is known as Istanbul, the Pope basically took over and grew in power and started persecuting those that didn't agree with him. So that's where Catholicism comes from. It's basically it's nature worship, because they worship the sun and worship idols. So the Holy Scriptures actually mention the Catholic Church in they're not by name. The Bible does not say the words Roman Catholic, or Roman Catholic Church. It doesn't say that, but it gives attributes and characteristics of the Roman Catholic Church. And in Daniel chapter 7, we read of a little horn that came up after the Roman Empire was divided into 10 kingdoms, and as the little horn which we know to be the papacy, was coming up, it uprooted 3 kingdoms, and those 3 kingdoms were the Heruli, the Vandals, and the Ostrogoths, and they were totally destroyed. They were destroyed because the papacy sent armies to destroy them because they had a different theology. Some say that because they were destroyed because they did not believe in the doctrine of the Trinity, which is obviously a false doctrine. But nowadays, even when you mention to Christians that the Trinity is a pagan doctrine, it's foreign to Scripture, they get very angry at you, including Seventh-day Adventists, who never used to believe in the Trinity doctrine, which is very surprising and very disappointing. Having given a summary of the origins of Catholicism and the rise of the Pope as the head of the Catholic Church, and not just the head of the Catholic Church, but the head of the Roman Catholic the Roman